Thank you, everyone, for joining NASCASP and NCAP for today's presentation, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, commonly referred to as CFPB, discussion on your money, your goals. During the next hour and a half, our presenters will provide an overview of the CFPB resources, including your money, your goals for use with staff, volunteers, and consumers, provide an overview of financial well-being and credit building information and resources, and highlight CFPB's COVID resources, compliance processes, and related data sources. Our audience today consists of community action professionals and NASCAP professionals who are part of a monthly training series developed for mid-level staff and frontline staff at local agencies, as well as state CFPB directors. We are so pleased to have with us today Denise Devon and Irene Scressi to join us on today's presentation. Denise is not new to the community action world, as she actually was previously the executive director of Minnesota's Community Action Agency Association and a national trainer for NCAP. Currently, Denise is a senior program advisor for the Office of Community Affairs at CFPB. Denise also has extensive state and congressional public policy experience focusing on issues to reduce poverty. Denise is also has a lot of expertise. She's also a National Kellogg Fellow in Leadership with the WK Kellogg Foundation and an ICF Credential Coach. Presenting with Denise is Irene Scressi. Irene is a policy analyst with the Office of Community Affairs within CFPB's Consumer Education and Engagement Division. She has been at CFPB since 2011. Previously, she worked at the Office of Financial Education, focusing on promoting effective practices in the financial field of education. She also worked at Annie E. Casey Foundation, the Ford Foundation, and the Coalition of Human Needs. So we have excellent presenters for you today. So before I turn it over to them, I do want to highlight that this is part of a collaborative effort of NASCASP and the National Community Action Partnership. So I'd like to ask Erin Wicks to talk a bit more about why we're here today. Erin, I'll turn it over to you.
You're good. Thank you so much, Janae. Appreciate it. We always enjoy partnering with NASCASP on very important topics such as this. I wanted to provide a little context for today's webinar because given what we've all been going through in the past several months, I think it's a valid question to ask, why should we be focusing on consumer financial health at this particular time? There's a pandemic going on. There are food shortages, customers that are not able to access adequate food. We have hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of customers facing housing challenges, childcare issues. We still have a number of schools that are closed or doing some sort of hybrid model, at-home learning that parents are juggling, employment challenges as a result of closures and economic impacts of the pandemic. Of course, the health challenges and the inequities that are affecting different communities differently, as well as a vigorous and important national discussion around issues of racial justice. So our network, our country, really has a full plate. Is this the time that we should be focusing on customer finances and credit and financial management? And we believe that it is, because in community action, we like to think ahead and we like to look upstream. And so as we think about where we are right now and where our customers are, many of our customers that are renting are protected by eviction moratoriums. Some of those have expired. Some are going to be expiring soon. That's going to create an enormous burden in terms of accrued rent, not to mention a housing crisis. Same sort of issue exists with utility and water payments. Customers that put expenses on credit cards during the pandemic are going to have to manage those balances as they come out of this time. And of course, predatory lenders and other sort of opportunistic businesses that are looking to exploit individuals and families in crisis. They're always sort of lurking in the community. And then more broadly, we face a really devastated economic landscape. A lot of the small businesses, the Main Street types of businesses like barber shops and other sort of neighborhood institutions. Many of these small businesses are owned by people of color. Many of those businesses are not surviving this time. And so that's going to create even more economic strain, both on the families of those business owners, as well as the neighborhoods in which they live, because those neighborhood assets may no longer be there. So when we look upstream and we look at some of the deeper issues, it's all the more important that we can sit down with our customers and with community stakeholders and talk about how we build that strong financial foundation. And so we're extremely fortunate to have our two presenters today from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, who are going to help us understand some of the resources that are available, as well as ways that we can advocate directly for our customers through the filing of complaints and other processes that CFPB has in place. And I just want to say, to those of you that are already using these resources, thank you. Community Action is deeply invested in a long-term partnership with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. These are just some of the agencies and organizations that have been making use of CFPB resources, and we'd love to continue to deepen that partnership. And so we really thank all of you for joining us today. And with that context set, I'd like to hand the presenting honors to Denise Devon, who I think is going to start us with a poll question today.
Denise, you're muted.
Denise, I think you may be muted on your side. Perhaps your headset?
Hello. Testing. Are you all right? Okay. Thank you very much thank you. My apologies to you. I want to thank you, Janae, very, very much, and to you, Aaron, and of course to Denise Harlow and the entire team for inviting us to partner with you on this today. One of the things I want to acknowledge is something neither of you may know, which is that in the early days of the Your Money, Your Goals project that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau launched, the Community Action Network was one of the very first earliest partners. And in those early days, there were over 2,000 trained. In one of your agencies alone, bus drivers and food service workers and everybody in between in a 500-person agency was trained. And we learned a lot with you and among you. So a public thank you. We want to start with a poll, and I'm going to ask Lauren to help. The question that Aaron set up for us is, do we focus really only on emergency services at this time, very difficult time in our country, or do we focus on financial empowerment activities such as cash flow, credit, debt, consumer protection, or do we do both? And if we could take a quick poll, could you vote with us and let us see what your response might be with a very large group here today? Do we do emergency services at this time in our history? Do we do financial empowerment, or do we do both? And if you could vote right now, and then we will get a response from Lauren, please let us know, Lauren, what you're finding there.
Okay. So
And for those folks who are on and can't find the poll, if you go down to the bottom right-hand side, you'll see 3 little dots, and you can click there and open the polling panel. But it seems like we've got quite a few, about half the people have finished, and it's looking like 87% are saying both. 6% are saying focus on number A, or choice A, and then about 4% say choice B.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating. One of the things we're learning about this is the tension that we just talked about, that Erin referenced, and Janae, of course, knows from her role. And, of course, we all know there is enormous pressure right now to respond to what's in front of us, and I get that. I come from the field. I totally get it. What we've also learned, and I'll use the example of somebody who gets a job, and of course a lot of people are losing jobs right now, but if we had for a moment an emergency reserve, just a small one, $250, let's say, and the car breaks down and we use that money to take care of the car repair, it makes it possible to get to work and to not miss work. And so what we're trying to do is connect the dots, that building the skills and the behaviors around some of these financial topics, one step at a time with very small efforts, will help the outcomes for clients and for programs. Easier said than done. What we want to do here today is we want to show you some additional resources that will be helpful to you. We always use this disclaimer, which says we're providing some educational information. This is not a legal representation, but I'm going to keep moving forward. We're going to show you some resources that we want you to know about. The decision was made by your leadership to really show an overview of resources, and that's a good thing. We aren't going to be able to go in depth on all of these resources, but we're going to show you what you can go back to, all right? So many of you know about Your Money, Your Goals. This is a compilation or a suite of materials that are free and available to you. What you may not know from the earlier days is that these materials are available online, and many of them, not all, will auto-fill and auto-calculate. So what we're learning in the field is a lot of people are using their phones when there's a bad internet connection. Or if there is an internet connection, they're able to download these materials in a PDF format and autofill. I'll show you in a minute. We have the larger toolkit that's got about 43 tools or worksheets called Your Money, Your Goals. There is an amazing set of resources here, these booklets that a lot of people use with clients or consumers or guests, and they tackle credit, debt, behind on bills, and savings. And they've been rolling out in the last couple of years. What's been really important for us to learn from practitioners is that while the booklets are great for clients, many staff use them as well. While most people thought the big toolkit would be only for staff, we've been pleasantly surprised to learn not so much. A lot of clients use it. So you want to take what fits for your context. Then we've got also some companion guides. Many of you work with or also receive community services block grant funds who are from Native communities. We have a very fabulous companion guide on reentry for people involved in the justice system. And we've also got a wonderful companion guide for people with disabilities. I know in the Head Start program and elsewhere throughout the system. We're well aware that the Community Action Network does everything in the food area, from food shelves to food banks to congregate dining to, home delivered meals. We know in economic development and housing, everything from homelessness to first-time home buyer. We know that you are in so many spaces and you have so many unique partnerships, and on your boards you have county commissioners and city and faith-based people and all that. So what we want to invite you to think about is, who are the audiences that could best be used with any of these materials? And go ahead and order them and use them and get trained on them. In the toolkit itself, the same topics are addressed. So goal setting, very, very important. Savings for emergencies, for irregular and occasional bills, for short-term goals, and maybe that's, a Head Start parent in Orange County said, my short-term goal is to find enough money so I can take my kids to the zoo. And in another agency that I was well aware of, I did a training in a different state. The goal was to buy a car, So there's a lot of different shorter-term goals and longer-term goals as well. Then there's this combination, 3, 4, and 5 go together to track what comes in. And one of the things we're learning is that some people, of course, have cash, but people cannot survive without also public benefits. So in tracking what comes in, we track cash. We also track child support, cash from a job, child support, but we also track things like SNAP or a housing voucher. And so when you put this combination together, it's more possible to make ends meet. We also have a new way of looking at paying bills by the week and not just by the month, and then also using a calendar as well as a chart. In 5, we put it all together in getting through the month with a cash flow method that, again, goes by the week and not by the month. And then, of course, 6 and 7 often will go together in a training session or in use, tracking debt, of course, credit. And then we've got a lot in here on financial services and products. One of the things that's so common in the country right now, which is a lot of people don't bank at all. And so how do they get paid? And what happens if they lose their payroll card? And what about prepaid debit cards and the costs, et cetera? And then finally, in protecting your money. So that's your money, your goals in the big toolkit. I'm going to show you a couple of slides, and then I'm going to take you to the website. This is what the tools look like. They're very easy to understand. The toolkit, of course, is in English and Spanish and Chinese, but they're really broken down like worksheets. Very, very, very simple. This is on tracking income and benefits. This is on tracking spending by the week, and again, it all adds up. This one is a cash flow budget. It shows how we start with what we've got. It may be a negative or it might be a positive, but we go by the week and we track what comes in and what goes out, and it carries forward into the next week. And of course, we have 3 months of the year that are 5 weeks instead of 4 weeks. And people love this method. It works for people. Then we've got it by the calendar. A lot of people use a calendar. All kinds of people. You'd be surprised in the kitchen. So really tracking when bills come in and when income comes in, right? And then we always use this slide about, cash flow really means that we increase what comes in, we decrease what goes out to try to make ends meet every week of the month. And some months are tougher than other months. As you know, the holiday months and summer when kids are home, and of course kids are home now, there are extra costs, right? And so we want to help people really think about the months of the year when there are extra bills, or the months of the year when there may be a little extra cash, like when the earned income tax credit comes in. So I want to just show you in the booklet, there's a fabulous tool. This is not in the toolkit, but you'll see that when you get it, about how to prioritize bills, which is really critical right now. And, we've offered to the community what we've learned from the community, frankly, which is, when do I pay my bills? Do I pay all the bills all at once? Of course, you have to pay bills, but do we need to pay some bills that will help us keep our housing, keep our jobs, keep our insurance? Do we have obligations that we have to pay, child support, taxes, student loans, and help people to prioritize? The booklets are very easy to use. They each have 8 tools in them. I'm not going to go through all of them, but these tools are meant to respond to a moment. How do I prioritize when I'm behind on my bills? That's the first one. The second one has to do with debt. What do I do? What do I owe? How do I check my credit report, etc.? How do I respond to a debt collector? What are the new rules around that? What about savings? How do I start small with all the different savings goals that I've got? And again, people will say, I have no money for savings, and we'll say, we understand that. And could we bring in the earned income tax credit to help seed something? Then this is on credit. Irene had a huge role in this one, and we're going to talk about credit in a minute. But lots of different tools on credit. How do I pull my credit report? How do I check to make sure that it's accurate? What do I do? What do I do with my score? And how do I get that freely? And I'm going to just move now quickly to the website because I want to show you some of the tools on the website. And Lauren, right now, I think I'm just going to go ahead and show my screen. So the first thing I want to show you is I want to show you this. There was a cap agency in a Midwestern state who saw this financial empowerment self-assessment, which is in the beginning of the toolkit. And it auto-fills and auto-calculates. So let me just show you. Only income and expenses matter when you're making a budget. Maybe I'd say that's true. You must have 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Not so true. If I make and stick to a monthly budget, I'll pay my bills on time. So you can go through this whole thing around money. How do you feel about money? I have enough set aside for emergencies and goals. No, I don't. I don't worry about being able to pay my bills and expenses. Whatever it is, it's a self-assessment. And I won't go through all of it now, but then we go to the experience. I have savings in a checking account that I use regularly. I've applied for and used a credit card, yes. And so as we go through all of this, it will do a summary. But the great thing that it does for the staff is it shows where to go in the toolkit to really increase knowledge and accuracy around some of these topics. This is an example of how to track income and benefits. For example, and I auto-populated, I didn't. Let's say I bring in $900 in week 4 and I bring in $900 in week 2, and let's say I bring in SNAP of $412, all of a sudden you see it auto-fills and auto-calculates. And this is true of most every tool that's online. In debt, maybe I want to reduce my debt with the snowball method, and I've got a credit card of $100, and I want to be able to pay $25 a month. It will autofill what I do. Let's say quickly on cash flow. I already populated this. We bring in $900 each of 2 weeks. Plus SNAP, it will show me what I'm bringing in every month, and then I go through my expenses. And I've just added in a few of these, and it'll show, oh, I'm already in the negative in the first week. Maybe I need to move my money around so that I can make ends meet, my bills around, I should say. So that's just an example there. Savings, let's say I've got a savings plan or a savings goal. I want to, let's say, do $250, but now I want to do it in 26 weeks. Well, in 26 weeks, it will tell me what I have to do each week, $9.62. So these are just some examples of the tools that are in the toolkit. I want to show you quickly a couple of resources before we get to Irene. This is the main website page called consumerfinance.gov. Maybe some of you have been here already, but my guess is that most of you haven't. And I want to offer to you that this is a safe go-to resource for you in a lot of different ways. The first tab here is on the coronavirus. I'll get to that in a minute. But I want to scroll down here and I want to show you a couple of things that will be enormously helpful to you. This left tab is on how to submit a complaint. If there has been a financial abuse situation and you as an advocate or you yourself want to submit a complaint, you go to this tab to do it. And it is taken in over 180 languages, easy in English and Spanish, and then there are other resources that will listen. The true story is when I worked with the Head Start program in Orange County, I did a training on this with the Parent Policy Council. The chair of the Parent Policy Council had really been hurt by a student loan. The minute this training was done, he went online and submitted a complaint and got a resolution, and then publicly told the Head Start parents how he did it. There was another example in the great city of Detroit. of a Head Start parent who had a debt collector that had been dishonest. We'll just say it that way. And in submitting a complaint, an action was taken with the debt collector, and this whole resolve happened. So I want to just share this tab with you. This tab is a big deal to us, and it is to you. And I'll show you in a minute how you can look up who's been complained about in your area. The second tab is about Ask the CFPB. This tab has several thousand questions, and they have to do with auto loans or bank accounts or credit cards or credit reports and scores or debt collection or fraud and scams or money transfers. Many of the clients you work with work really hard and they transfer money out of the country to support family members or mortgages and prepaid debit cards and payday loans, student loans and reverse mortgages. Many of your agencies work with elderly people in a whole variety of ways, and the scams that are going on are very challenging right now. And I won't even go into it all because we don't have time. But this whole area, anybody could just submit a question in here and do a search, and answers will come up. And I want you to know that this is a great resource on a variety of topics for you. I'm going to go back right now. Some of you have to do research, and the research that you do is for your needs assessments. You can go into the data and research area, and there are many reports that you can draw on as you do your needs assessment for your work, for your funding. I want to also show you, tell your story. Many of you are able to tell a story of success or a story of challenge, and we learn about these stories from you in the community, and we invite you to use this. I want to quickly go into submit a complaint. And in submitting a complaint, you simply start the complaint process, and it will ask you lots and lots of questions, and then you answer the questions, and then there's how would you like it to be resolved? As a volunteer, I work as a financial coach in Minnesota and elsewhere, and I can't tell you the numbers of times that complaints have been submitted on credit reports or many other things. And the complaint process is a very easy thing to use, and I just encourage you to go ahead and think about that. I want to now quickly go up to how to protect yourself from the coronavirus. In this, underneath here are 4 tabs. One is how to protect yourself from the coronavirus. One is how to look at the consumer complaint database. This also is very important. And if you're having trouble making payments, let's start here because I just started with the how to submit a complaint. And I thought this would be very interesting to you. So if we go into the consumer database right here, I asked Janae what state she came from, and she said she came from the great state of Oregon. Now, Oregon doesn't have a lot of complaints, but let's flip over right now to the great state of Georgia, all right? So Georgia's got a lot of complaints. And when you look up Georgia, you can see the trends for the complaints. You can see all that's going on. But let's say right now the highest number of complaints is in the credit reporting and credit repair area. We don't have time to go into all of it now, but what I want to share with you is that you can look up your state. You can actually look it up by zip code, and you can look at what's going on in your area. Why is this important? It's important so that you know what's happening in your area, and you can be the best partner and advocate with your the people that you work with. And you can also share this information with your boards of directors and use it as you start to prioritize your program areas. And I won't say any more because that's your area and not mine. But I wanted you to know about the database and how to look things up, okay? The next thing I want to do is I want to show you something that's important here, and I'm having trouble getting back. Let's go right now into I'll do it right here and see if I can do it in this way. In Consumer Tools, and Erin will be able to share this with you, there are guides for you on how to buy a house, how to get an auto loan, how to manage someone's money as you grow, everything from preschool all the way up to teens and young adults. Navigating. Some of you work with military people, paying for college, planning for retirement. All this is here for you and available to you, a plethora of resources here. Now, let's just go back quickly, and I want to go back to practitioner resources. Irene is going to speak to financial well-being, and also she's done so much work. She won't have a chance to do this on financial coaching, but there's lots here in resources for youth. This is where you find your money, your goals, all the different your money, your goals topics that are here. Finally, when we go back then to this topic on credit and in, I'm just waiting for the screen to change so that I can get back here. There it is right there. Let's go back and let me just come back here for a second. I'm struggling. I'll come back here to help you. I think what we want to do now is we want to go into protecting your money with credit. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Irene, who's going to start talking with you about credit. Irene.
Great. Well, thank you, Denise, and it's great to be with all of you. We've got a big crowd here, which is great. I just have to note that I see in the chat one question that I can't help but answer, and someone's asked, is the toolkit, the Your Money, Your Goals toolkit, available to purchase? I feel it would be a great tool. And we are a government agency. Everything we have is free and publicly available and can be ordered or downloaded at no cost. So this is all yours here, what you see up the screen. So as Denise mentioned, someone possibly also said earlier, within the office I work on access to credit as well as financial coaching issues. We're going to focus on the credit piece today. And I used to work on financial well-being, so I'll talk about that in a minute as well. But first, since we're already on the website, we do have some range of content around how to manage your finances during coronavirus. And so I will just speak to this one piece, which is protecting your credit. There are some specific protections under the CARES Act. So, Denise, if you scroll down a little bit, there's a fair amount of information here. But what I just want to focus in on is probably the sort of the summary of all this is this little checklist. We'll see if we can get it.
There it is.
All to fit. There we go. Yeah, that's basically everything. So the content on here is something that you can use with clients to help walk people, or yourself as well, of course, to walk people through ways to make sure that your credit isn't damaged to the extent possible during financial struggles during coronavirus. So the key thing, and this is also in a debt section we have under coronavirus, is the important thing is to reach out to lenders, because many of the relief programs are only available if the customer actually proactively reaches out. And so our list here is, you've got to obviously find the lender. Sometimes that's actually not as easy as it sounds. Check to see if there are hardship or relief programs available, either on the website or call, and then they're typically called accommodations under the CARES Act. Is to find out what options there are. There's different options for mortgages versus student loans versus other types of credit that some lenders will be offering. Some are required, actually. Some are up to the lender. And then actually get that accommodation or that relief or hardship. And it could be things like delayed payments, changes in interest rates. There's a range of different things that lenders may be willing to do for a customer. Confirm what that is, comply with it, and then check your credit report to make sure that it's accurately reflected in the credit report. And it can take a few months for it to show up, and then dispute any errors you might see. And so the CARES Act, I'll just say quickly, and it's a little bit, it's in the text here a little bit higher up. The CARES Act essentially protects customers who get an accommodation or hardship from a lender from their credit being dinged, as long as they were not already delinquent. So you can't, once you have an accommodation, if you follow the terms of that, you cannot be marked as delinquent. and that will continue for up to 3 months beyond the end of a national emergency. So that's important. If people are having trouble paying their bills, they should reach out to their lenders and ask for hardships, relief accommodations. There's different terms, and that will help. Now, if you're already delinquent, of course, it's not going to change that, but it can prevent further delinquency. So there's a little more detail in this written section actually up above about that. I want to make sure everybody knows about that because I'm sure that is a major issue for a lot of the folks you're serving who are having trouble paying bills and are worried about what will happen to their credit. Again, you can go and look at this yourself as well. We're now going to switch over a little more generally to credit. We'll go back to the slides now, Denise.
There you go.
Thank you. So I don't think anybody would be surprised to know how important a good credit record is. It influences how much you pay, but it also influences things like access to housing, employment, and other things that are obviously critically important right now. Just quickly, so next slide, please. I just want a little bit of context. The Bureau did some research on credit invisibility, meaning people who do not have a credit score, which is actually sort of hard to know. We know who has a credit score, right? It's in the Credit Bureau records. We don't know who doesn't. So we did some research to figure that out. And we found that about 11% of the adult population has no credit record at all. They just don't appear in the Credit Bureau records. And some people, another about 8%, have a credit record, but there's not enough or it's too old for them to have a score. So when you add those up, it's just about 20% or 45 million Americans who do not have a credit score. This data is a few years old, so it may have changed a little bit, but probably not significantly. I mean, basically, there's a lot of people who do not have a credit score that can help them get access to the credit they need or also housing or employment. So that's kind of a baseline. It's something we obviously want to help organizations like yours help clients to build a credit record or protect credit they have. So next slide, I'll just share, when we looked at this credit invisibility, not surprisingly, there's sharp decline. So people start off with no credit record by definition when they become adult, when they become 18, and it declines through their 20s till you reach that baseline of around 20% not having a score, and then ticks up a little bit. We also found, not surprisingly, a strong correlation between having a lower income and the likelihood of being credit invisible. In fact, we found that in low-income neighborhoods, the lowest quartile of income neighborhoods, about almost half of the people living in those neighborhoods do not have a credit score. So really, that's very high. If half of folks don't have a score that can help them access some of the things that they might need. And lastly, the correlations on race and ethnicity are, as you would expect, which is that Black and Latino individuals have much higher rates of credit invisibility. And again, details on all of this, these reports are on our website if you actually want to dig into the details. Just one more slide on this topic. I share this because I know there's a lot of words on this slide, and but the thing that's interesting to me is we looked at how people become credit visible, how they enter the credit system, the first product, and that happens for the most part when people are younger. Credit cards typically are the most frequent product where people get into the credit system. But the thing that I find really interesting and distressing are captured in these very wordy second two bullets, which is that consumers in lower income neighborhoods are much more likely to enter the credit system through a negative item. So a collection or public records, which are things like bankruptcies, unpaid child support, unpaid utility bills. So almost 25% of folks in low-income neighborhoods enter through a negative first record. And on sort of the flip side, a lot of young people in higher income households enter the credit system through being a co-borrower or authorized user or co-signer on a product. So often a parent, for example, will help someone get access to credit. much higher rate in upper income neighborhoods. Again, not surprising when you hear it, but you think that's how, some neighborhoods are starting behind and never catch up, some consumers. And so there's things that people can do around helping lower income consumers access better products. We won't really have time to get into that today, but I always find this just an interesting fact, especially in a time when we're all discussing, racial disparities and income inequality. Mm-hmm. So moving on, I'm just going to share a few other resources. So the credit booklet that Denise showed you is great, and it has all these wonderful tools on checking your credit score or checking your credit report and understanding what goes into a credit score. We also have some other tools that are not part of your goals because we're developed by different offices at the Bureau, but may make nice complements. This is just what you see here is the Money Topic credit report portal. It's one of those tabs that Denise actually had showed you earlier. This is a place to get a lot of definitions and questions answered about basic credit topics. So this is a good place to send a consumer. If you go to the next slide, especially for those of you who have offices, and I guess people aren't coming in as much, but we have a lot of one-page handouts outside of the Your Money, Your Goals suite of tools. These things like, how to check your credit report, understand your credit score, how to rebuild your credit in plain language. And these are all things you can order or download. There's more than what you see here, but just as a sample that, again, are very helpful, especially if you have people coming and going in an office. But I'm sure in times of COVID, there's other ways we can share some of these resources. But, again, all available, all free. Next slide. If people need to dispute items on their credit report, if there are mistakes, especially in times of COVID, if things aren't being correctly reported, it's very important to get that fixed. And we have sample letters and instructions on our website. In fact, the toolkit, I think, links to these that tells you what to say, how to say it, who to send it to. So, again, you don't have to figure that out yourself. We have those templates. Next slide. This I'm showing you this because for some of you who are dealing with housing and employment issues, this might be useful. In addition to the well-known credit reporting agencies like Equifax and Experian, there are other types of consumer reporting companies that are more specialty. They do things like tenant screening. They do things like employment screening. So they're drawing on some of the same data that the traditional credit reporting companies draw on, but they're being used by different entities. So landlords, for example, or employers, they have some slightly different legal requirements on what they can and can't do. But you have the same right to a free credit report through these companies as you do from the big three, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. So, but most people don't know that. So this is a list we have where it has the information on these companies and how to get a report. So if you have a client who's having issues getting turned down for rental housing because of something in their tenant screening report, you could order that report from the company and try to figure out what's wrong and try to fix it, figure out if there's a mistake on there or see what the issue is. So this is, again, in a time when housing and employment and such are particularly are large, increasingly large barriers for people. I think this might be of use to some folks. Next slide. I think that. Okay, so that's the end of the credit section. Again, we have lots of resources. We have lots of other research. We have a limited time, so we can't get to all of that. But hopefully this gives you a little bit of a flavor about what the Bureau has in terms of things that you could access in the area of credit. We are also now going to cover financial well-being. I noticed a question in the chat about whether the self-assessment in Your Money, Your Goals and the well-being scale are the same or separate. They are, in fact, completely separate. They have different purposes, but we'll talk a little bit more about the financial well-being scale and how it might be useful to you for the next few minutes. So this came out of the Office of Financial Education, where I used to work at the Bureau, and I moved over to the same office as Denise, but I love the financial well-being scale, and so I have continued to have some connection to it. The Bureau did a project to define financial well-being, sort of the end goal of what we're trying to help people do, not just have a better credit score or not just have more money or more savings. Those are all important things, but they're all for some purpose, right? For longer term security, for control over your the finances. People want those things, not just to have money and a credit score. They have goals. And so we tried to define through consumer interviews and other methodologies what would be a common definition for financial well-being. And it is these 4 elements: control over your day-to-day, month-to-month finances, capacity to absorb a financial shock, being on track to meet your financial goals, and having the financial freedom to make choices to enjoy life. And these can be thought of as security and freedom of choice in the present and future. And obviously nobody has all 4 of these things completely. Everyone is on a path at a different state, in a different way, working towards having more security and more freedom of choice. And so this is as applicable to someone who's very low income. They're just not going to be very far along that pathway, perhaps. And it's also unique to each individual, because the way I want to make choices to enjoy my life is going to be different than how Denise does or how Aaron does. So in each case, it's sort of given the resources.
Irene, I think your audio became disconnected.
Whoop. Okay, can you hear me now? Sorry,
Yes.
I pulled this out. I was fiddling with this as I talked, and I pulled it out. I'm sure you missed several riveting sentences of mine. But what I was trying to say before I unplugged myself, and I'm not going to touch this again, was that after we developed this definition a few years ago, we then created a questionnaire, a 10-question scale that measures, it gives you a score, similar to the SAT measures your academic, whatever, ability, achievement, something. You answer a bunch of questions and you get a number. And we have something similar for your subjective sense. Subjective, so not how much savings you have, not what your credit score is, but your subjective sense. And these are a little out of order. Denise, can you jump down to the actual questions, and then we'll go back real quick?
You bet, there they are.
These are the 10 questions on the scale, and note they are very subjective. So I could handle a major unexpected expense. It describes me completely, very well, somewhat, not at all, et cetera, et cetera. I can enjoy life because of the way I'm managing my money. I'm just getting by financially. Giving a gift for a wedding or birthday would put a strain on my finances for the month. You can see how each of these questions is kind of getting at those issues of security and freedom of choice in the present and the future in a different way. And actually, through very complicated statistical scoring and methodology, when you answer all these questions, you get a number between 0 and 100. The average score in the U.S. is about 54. If you fall under a 37, you're really struggling. 37 to, can't remember the exact breakdowns. We have some other resources that break down kind of different subgroups by kind of low, very low, high. But it's an interesting way to measure where people are about how they feel about their finances. And it correlates highly with objective things. So if you have more money, you're going to generally have a better financial well-being score. But it's not entirely about money. It is about how you manage your money and what you want to achieve. So there's some interesting nuances to that. So this is the scale. If you pop back, Denise, to the what is special slide. Again, sorry. The thing that's interesting about this is that, again, it measures a subjective sense of how they're doing. As I was starting to say, it is highly correlated to your objective situation, meaning your money, your credit score, all that. But it captures something additional, which is really kind of how you manage your money, what your financial skill is. It is valid, reliable, and tested very rigorously. It is comparable across different programs and populations. So you could compare, now you could compare yourself to your sister program across town or to other, different clients within your programs. It is being used by the government, by researchers and financial capability practitioners. So we have users like Department of Defense, and the Federal Reserve has put it in an annual survey. And so it's actually got, quite a bit of use. And last but not least, it is free and accessible, and it is mostly easy to use. I once had mostly in parentheses there, decided our clearance people wouldn't like it, but there's a few quirks to how you actually score it, but it is reasonably easy to use. So that's the scale. Next slide.
Oops, I think
I was going to say,
go back here.
that
Here
looks
we go.
familiar.
Sorry about that.
Back one.
Okay, there we are.
Over. There we go. I just showing you this to say we have a lot of resources and research using the scale. These are all the 8 reports we have put out thus far, explaining well-being, explaining how to measure it. Financial Well-Being in America is our large national survey looking at the financial well-being of Americans of all income ranges and looking at what we know about the scale. We look specifically at veterans and older Americans. We do some more kind of regressions to figure out what's driving financial well-being. And the answer, by the way, is financial skill, which you'll see in one of the report titles. And then the blue-covered one is a toolkit for practitioners. So for any of you who want to use that, I would start with that because it kind of encapsulates a lot of the other stuff, but in practitioner speak in ways hopefully that would be helpful. So that all available. And actually on the next slide, and Denise admit, whoops, wrong way again.
There you go. Yep.
There's a financial well-being resources page. Denise referenced it. It was one of those tabs under practitioner resources, and that's where you can find all these different reports. So just a couple more things to say on this. We also have, you can also do the questionnaire online and actually have a client, sit down with a client, have them fill in those little boxes. It will come out with the colorful line you see there is actually showing the national average and then where you scored based on having taken that test. Green is better than red. So it shows you kind of where you are. It shows you some resources that connect, and you can compare yourself to people of the same, of the similar age, similar income, and I think there's one more criteria. So this is a place where you can take a client to actually kind of get a quick way to take the scale and have it scored automatically. And so the last thing I'll say, and this will finish my part of the presentation. Well, what could you do with this thing? Well, you could use it to measure individual progress of clients, right? So people come in, you could take it, you could have them take it again later and see if it's changed. It's particularly good at capturing increases in people's confidence or their subjective sense that they're doing better. You may see changes in that before you see change in credit score, right? Because it may take time for a credit score. If you're working with someone and they're making changes in their life and things are improving, or they get through a crisis that community action agencies are helping people with, some of the harder numbers might take a while to change, but you might see an increase in someone's subjective sense that their life is going better here. So that could be helpful. The second thing, and probably the single most useful or the single most frequently mentioned thing when I ask practitioners, what do you like about the scale, is they like to use it to facilitate one-on-one conversations. They find that those questions, because they're very subjective and open-ended, can get people to kind of open up and talk about their money issues as opposed to, well, how much savings do you have and why don't you have more and how can we get you to get more? It's more, how do you feel about this money situation? So that can be a helpful conversation starter. People also use it in some group settings when they're doing group workshops. And then obviously numbers 4 and 5, for those of you who are into research kind of stuff and evaluation and data-driven program improvement, you can certainly use the scale to inform yourself and your funders and others how your program is doing. You can use it to compare programs. Funders may use it to compare different grantees they have and just see what kind of progress people are making. So it's got a lot of different uses. But as I said, in the immediate moment, it's particularly helpful in some cases to get people to start to share some of their money issues. And before you ask, because everyone asks, we don't have hard and fast recommendations, but generally programs don't share the numerical score with the client because it's kind of hard to explain what it means. And someone says, well, last week I had a 48 and this week I have a 47, and what's a 47? What does that mean? So we have some sense of what that's correlated to, but most programs don't actually share the number because we don't have a very easily explainable. I mean, we sort of know what it means, but we don't know quite how to communicate yet. We hope to have more resources around that going forward. So I am going to stop there.
Thank you, Irene.
And happy to talk more about any of these things. Sorry we've squished so much into an hour, but I'll turn it back to Denise to
Thank you,
see where we
Irene.
go from here.
Irene, just something that I wanted to share with you and everybody is that we actually showed the scale and how to use it in a large training, a very large community action agency, about 400 staff, and we did it in the room. And we asked the question, what do you think your clients would answer? And everybody brainstormed. And what do you think the staff would answer? And everybody brainstormed. They got to see the score. And the great thing is that there are action steps at the bottom of the scale in the website, for example. And the action steps can lead into different Your Money, Your Goals tools to help strengthen the next step that's appropriate. And people can do it in groups or individually or whatever. And they loved it. And in fact, the HR director, without breaking confidentiality, said, I would love every staff person quietly to take this when they come into the agency to work. And I would love everybody in the programs to do this so that everybody can see where they are and how they can improve their own financial well-being. And the same is true to the questionnaire on the financial empowerment self-assessment. Another CAP agency in the Southwest said, I would like everybody in my program to take this quietly and see where they are so that the confidence and the knowledge can increase as we start to continue to do this work. So I wanted to share that. Those are a couple of true things. I also want to quickly show something that we weren't able to get to, and I'm just going to do it in this way. Consumerfinance.gov. This is the tab that shows a variety of resources available to you in the coronavirus. So when you go here, this is all the resources that are available on mortgages, student loans, scams, finances, etc. And I would just offer this to you. But one of the tabs that goes down here is all the support from other government agencies. And the Bureau's worked really, really hard in partnership with HUD, in partnership with other federal agencies about what is there for us at this time in history. And I'd be remiss in the last 4 minutes we've got if I didn't show this to you. And then finally, as we go back here, this is what Irene has done such a great job. This is the financial well-being. So even in the middle of a training or in the middle of a staff meeting or whatever, people can go down here and just do the quiz in a group and say, now, what do we think? I could handle a major expense. Not really, maybe. I'm secure in my financial future. Not very much. Because of my money situation, I feel like I'll never have the things I want in life. Not sure. I can enjoy life because of the way I manage my money. I'm just getting by. I'm concerned about the money I have will or will not last. I'm making this up, of course. A gift for a wedding or a birthday is going to put a strain. I have money left over at the end of the month, rarely. I'm behind in my finances, often. My finances control my life, often. 18 to 61, and then I get my score, right? So that's what Irene has been talking about. And then as you kind of look down here, now what do I do next? This is what I'm referencing. Well, maybe I'll go into the Your Money, Your Goals tools as a practitioner, and that could help me strengthen. Maybe the score is or isn't that important. I don't know. But by age, by household income, and by employment status, you can see where that is. So a great piece of work here, Irene, that you and colleagues have done. And I think at this moment, Erin and Janae, we've got about 3 minutes left so that we can respond to questions to anybody who's got those. But I think this would be a good time that we've pretty much been able to share what we could in this very short period of time. And I would turn it to you, Erin, to see if we've got anything in the chat function.
Well, thank you so much, Irene and Denise. There's so many resources, and we appreciate that you were able to cover as many of them as you could in the short time that we had. I want to come back to a question that was submitted about accessing the materials, and I just want to clarify. If someone wants to order maybe 500 copies of a brochure or a handout, you said that they're free. Can they place an order for printed materials and then receive those so that they can distribute those to customers, or do they have to just print those out themselves at their agency?
Oh, no. Oh, my goodness. I'm so glad this is coming up. And I should just say here, not only are these resources for free, there are resources for practitioners, there are slides, there are videos on how to do trainings, etc. But let me just show you how to access the toolkits. Again, you order it in English, Spanish, or Chinese. Once you go, you can download it, and then this is how you order. It's really easy to do. You just simply go in, you select it, and they come in boxes of 50 or 60. So you can select the numbers that you need. We would ask you this. If you're going to, every staffer should have a copy of this on their desk or at least on their site. Anything you order for clients, it's a waste, to be honest, if you order something and you're only going to use one tool. So we would ask you to be thoughtful about that, but you can pick anything you want. You can order it. Many of these will come for visually impaired people. They'll come in the language. You know, we don't have all of them in Spanish, but many we do, and more coming online. But this is where you have to put in a post office box number. If there's a physical address, you won't get it. So that's really important, and it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to get these materials. So no, this is all free. You can also download everything in PDF and have it on your desktop, if you will. So I hope, Aaron, this answers the question that's been raised. This is where you do it, right here.
Denise, can I just clarify? You have to have a P.O. box to get materials? You can't have a street address?
Our experience in Your Money or Goals is wrong.
The reverse, right? The reverse.
It's the reverse. Thank you, Irene. Thank you.
That's really odd, trying to stuff a giant box into a P.O. box.
Thank you. You have to have a physical address and not a P.O. box. You won't get it if it's a P.O. box. Thank you, Irene. Thank you. But you can see everything that's here and available to you, not just in Your Money or Goals, but Money as You Grow, money for older adults, there's a lot here.
And another quick question that came in through the chat. I know that there are issues that some of our customers have with their employers in terms of not being paid their full wages, wage theft issues. Are those types of issues reportable through the CFPB, or should customers use another avenue to report those types of issues?
Irene, could you speak to this?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the CFPB complaint function only takes complaints on financial products, which we have jurisdiction over. So we do not have jurisdiction over what an employer does. I'm assuming Department of Labor would, but we have no legal. I'd be mad if I found out you weren't getting your wages, but I, as a bureau employee, couldn't do anything. So, it would have to do with a financial product and not an investment product, which SEC. But on the complaint function, there will be some guidance about what we can and can't do. Well, sorry about that one. My guess is it would be your DOL or your state employment agency.
I can tell you this on identity theft issues. The Federal Trade Commission has got a fabulous site, identitytheft.gov, and that relates to that issue. But thank you, Irene, for responding to this one on the employer.
Well, I see that we are just a couple minutes over time. What I'd like to offer the folks that are still on is to please reach out to the Community Action Partnership, to NASCASP, or to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau if you have some feedback for us about these resources. We believe that there is a very vital partnership that we want to continue to grow among our networks. And today, we were only in 60 minutes, we were only able to just give a very broad overview of the resources that are available. Future steps that we'd like to consider is for those of you that use these resources a lot in your agency and have had success, we would love to feature your stories so that other community action agencies can learn from that experience. And we'd also like to talk some more about the ability to use these resources for advocacy, because as Denise and Irene said, you can use the CFPB to advocate individually for customers, but there's also a wealth of data and resources there that can help us as a network engage in advocacy in our communities as well as at the state and national level. So there are just so many different things that we can do together. And this is the beginning, or not the beginning, but the continuation of an ongoing conversation between the Community Action Network and the CFPB. And we want to invite all of you to continue to participate. Janae, any final thoughts before we end today?
I just wanted to say thank you so much to Denise and Irene. And as Erin said, this is such a critical partnership and touch point for all of us and for my state members who are on the line. You know, you saw that all of these amazing tools, and they really are wonderful tools, are free for you. And so let's continue this conversation. Let's access this. Let's tell our story about what's happening in our communities and how we can really help people grow their assets and really develop next steps.
Great.
Well,
And
our thanks to both of you and all of your members in your state associations. You know, you guys are doing amazing work, and you have been since the beginning. So thank you.
And so, again, thank you, Irene and Denise, for this wealth of information. Thank you to Janae and NASCASP for co-sponsoring this presentation. I just want to say one more time, if there are some resources or topics that you feel that we could go deeper into, and I think there were a lot of them that we potentially could explore more deeply, we'd love to do that. So let us know at the partnership at NASCASP, and we'd be happy to team up again to bring these resources to the Community Action Network. Thanks to everyone for joining us today. We wish you good health, and please be safe. Thanks a lot.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.